Mike Lawson had spent years working for this moment. After grinding through college, dealing with nightmare landlords, and pouring every extra dollar into his savings, he finally stood on the front lawn of his dream home. It was everything he had ever wanted: a modern, two-story house with a sprawling backyard, a covered patio, and the crown jewel, a pristine, in-ground swimming pool. It wasn't just a pool, it was a symbol of all his hard work. The first time he stepped into the water, he let the cool embrace remind him that he had made it. He had done everything right. He researched the market, negotiated hard, and even accounted for the pesky Homeowners Association, HOA, fees in his budget. The HOA had rules, sure, but Mike was a reasonable guy. Keep the lawn neat. No problem. No weird paint colors? Fine. No wild parties? He wasn't much of a party guy anyway. For the first few weeks, life was perfect. He spent evenings floating in his pool, grilling on weekends, and soaking in the quiet suburban peace. Then came the first letter. Mike opened his mailbox one morning to find an official-looking envelope stamped with the HOA's emblem. Inside was a notice, neatly typed and full of legal jargon, but one line stood out. Per HOA Bylaw 14B, your backyard pool has been designated as a community amenity, open for resident use. Mike read it twice, thinking he must have misunderstood. Community amenity? His pool? The one he paid for, maintained, and enjoyed in private? No way. He flipped through the HOA bylaws, which he had admittedly skimmed when buying the house. Buried deep in the fine print was a vague clause stating that any amenity benefiting the community could be reassigned as public property if the HOA deemed it necessary. Mike clenched his jaw. This had to be a mistake. The next day, he attended the HOA board meeting to clear things up. What he walked into felt less like a discussion and more like a tribunal. The HOA board sat in a semicircle inside the neighborhood clubhouse, their expressions ranging from indifferent to outright smug. At the center of it all was Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. Karen was the embodiment of HOA tyranny, meticulously dressed, clipboard in hand, and exuding the confidence of someone who had spent years dictating how high mailboxes should be. She offered Mike a patronizing smile as he approached. "Ah, Mr. Lawson," she said smoothly. "I assume you're here about the notice?" Mike tossed the letter onto the table. "Yeah, this has to be some kind of mistake. My pool isn't a community property. It's in my backyard. I paid for it. I maintain it." Karen clasped her hands together. "And we appreciate your contributions. But Section 14B clearly states that any property feature deemed beneficial to the community may be designated as a shared amenity. We currently lack a neighborhood pool, so yours is the perfect solution." Mike's eye twitched. "Solution to what? No one asked for this. You're telling me you can just take my pool?" "It's not taking," Karen corrected. "It's reallocating. And since it's now a community pool, there will be a new entrance gate installed for residents." Mike felt his blood pressure rising. "You have got to be kidding me." Karen continued as if he hadn't spoken. "We've also factored maintenance costs into your HOA dues. They will increase accordingly." Mike gritted his teeth. "So let me get this straight. You're taking my pool, letting strangers use it, and charging me extra to maintain it? Think of it as a way to contribute to your wonderful neighborhood." Karen beamed. "The decision is final." Mike stood there, fists clenched. He had worked too hard for this home to let a bunch of bureaucrats claim his property as their own. If they wanted to fight, they had just picked the wrong guy to mess with. Mike knew he couldn't fight the HOA alone. He needed allies, other homeowners who had been pushed around by Karen and her cronies. He started going door to door, talking to neighbors, listening to their grievances. It turned out he wasn't alone. Karen had been running the HOA like a dictatorship for years, enforcing ridiculous rules while funneling fees into projects that benefited her inner circle. Mike rallied his neighbors. They formed a coalition, pooling resources to hire a lawyer and dig deeper into the HOA's finances. What they found was worse than they had expected: misappropriated funds, unauthorized fines, and a slush fund that Karen had been using for business trips. Armed with evidence, they launched a campaign to remove the HOA board. They held secret meetings, printed newsletters, and filed a formal complaint with the State Housing Authority. Then came the final showdown. At the next HOA meeting, the clubhouse was packed. Mike and his allies presented their findings, exposing Karen's corruption in front of the entire neighborhood. Homeowners gasped, murmurs filled the room, and Karen's carefully crafted empire began to crumble. "This is slander," Karen shrieked, her face red with fury. Mike smirked. "It's called accountability, and it's about time you faced it." A vote was called. By an overwhelming majority, Karen and the entire board were removed. The HOA was dissolved, and the homeowners reclaimed control of their own properties. Mike's pool? His, and his alone. A week later, Mike floated in his pool, a cold drink in hand, watching as his neighbors celebrated their newfound freedom. The HOA was gone. Karen had retreated in disgrace. And for the first time in months, the neighborhood felt like a community again. No more ridiculous rules. No more extortion. Just people enjoying their homes, as they should. Mike closed his eyes and smiled. Home sweet home. The end.